Chapter 30-27. Saying that, Yi Qingluo's gaze looked towards Gu Jingyu as her tone was solemn and serious. So, I'm very sorry, no matter if it's this life or the next life or the future after that, I love Xian. My lover will only be Xian. Following Yi Qingluo's serious tone without a shred of hesitation, Gu Jingyu's face turned pale bit by bit. His tensed body seemed to have suddenly lost all his strength. He staggered a few steps back. Then he sat on the ground in a sorry state. His eyes widened. He couldn't believe that Yi Qingluo had personally overturned all his understanding. He could tell. Yi Qingluo's words weren't because of any coercion. Came from the bottom of his heart. His voice came from the bottom of his heart. He could tell. Every time Yi Qingluo mentioned the two words, Xian. The gentleness in her tone and the obvious sweetness. All of you. Which hall's female attendants are you from? Dmo Xian's vision slowly fell onto those few female attendants who were kneeling on the ground, trembling non-stop. Dmo Xian's gaze locked onto her. The maids were so frightened that tears flowed from their eyes, and their bodies trembled uncontrollably. The feeling of death came. The maids were so frightened that they wept bitterly. They kowtowed desperately and begged for forgiveness. They knew that Dmo Xian pampered Yi Qingluo a lot. But he didn't know. Dmo Xian pampered Yi Qingluo that much. They had never seen such a gentle overlord when he looked at Yi Qingluo. It's fine if you don't want to tell me. Dmo Xian's lips curled up slightly. The curvature of his lips made one's scalp numb. He shifted his gaze and said calmly, "Ah Feng." A gust of hurricane came from the dark and stopped in front of Dmo Xian. Investigate the identities of these people clearly and drag them to the training ground. Dmo Xian instructed. Ah Feng glanced at the 5 pale-faced maids and said, "Yes, this subordinate will definitely give them an unforgettable memory in the training ground." With that, Ah Feng quickly walked toward the 5 maids. Just as he was about to carry them away, behind him Dmo Xian's faint voice was heard, "Wind." Ah Feng stopped and waited respectfully. Remember to let all the Emperor Palace's disciples know the reason for their punishment. Following Dmo Xian's words, Feng's hand trembled as he grabbed the maid's hand. He was sure that the look on his face right now was extremely strange. The overlord is... You want to clear the mistress' name? Using such a method to tell everyone in the Imperial Palace about Yi Qingluo's identity? Similarly, Gu Jingyu, who was extremely shocked, also thought of this. Gu Jingyu's face was so pale that there was no other color. Earlier they were still criticizing Dmo Xian for not acknowledging Yi Qingluo's identity. So the entire Imperial Palace refused to acknowledge Yi Qingluo as the future mistress of the Imperial Palace. Now Dmo Xian was using practical actions to directly slap their faces. Dmo Xian's vision shot towards Gu Jingyu. He moved his 5 fingers and a stream of dark force shot into the air. In just a few breaths, a smoky green figure hurried over. "Lord Dizun, why did you summon me in such a hurry? Is there something important?" The figure gradually approached. "Wasn't that beautiful woman Tang Beiyuan? Personally send young sect master Gu back to South Tide Continent." Dmo Xian's tone was icy cold, but on his face, there was no trace of joy or anger. When Tang Beiyuan heard that, she instantly understood the deep meaning behind Dmo Xian's words. She raised her brows in interest as she sized Gu Jingyu up from head to toe. This lad actually had his eyes on the woman in the overlord's heart. A vinegar jar like the overlord. Chapter 30-28. He clearly knew that he had taken a fancy to a woman he shouldn't have. You should have taken a detour. This kid actually dared to swagger in front of the overlord? Wasn't that courting death? In addition to that, Tang Beiyuan also noticed Yi Qingluo, who was nestled in the overlord's arms, wrapped tightly in a red robe. Tang Beiyuan's mind immediately conjured up an exciting drama. Dizun had specially summoned her to send Gu Jingyu back to Wind Valley sect. In other words, he wanted her to send Gu Jingyu back to the Wind Valley sect as a hall master of the Imperial Palace. This was also clearly telling the Wind Valley sect. The Imperial Palace was dissatisfied with Gu Jingyu. If the Wind Valley sect didn't want to be enemies with the Imperial Palace, Gu Jingyu's position as young sect master, he probably couldn't sit still anymore. Even if Gu Jingyu was the destined young master of the Wind Valley sect, in front of the interests of the Wind Valley sect, everything else didn't count for much. Tang Beiyuan sighed inwardly for Gu Jingyu. Immediately clearing his throat, he straightened his back and looked at Zhou Xian seriously. Yes, Overlord. This subordinate will definitely complete the mission. Zhou Xian waved his hand and carried Yiqing Luo as he turned around and walked out of the courtyard. This house is not clean, I'll bring you to another courtyard. Unclean? Yiqing Luo thought for a while before she realized the meaning behind Zhou Xian's words. Just now, Gu Jingyu seemed to have entered the bedroom. It was stepped on by Gu Jingyu, so it wasn't clean? This jealousy, it's a little strange. However, complaining was one thing. Yiqing Luo's heart still felt warm. Zhou Xian carried Yiqing Luo and walked to the door of the room. Sitting on the ground, Gu Jingyu's face was filled with shock as he clenched his fists tightly. His face was filled with anger and embarrassment as his face flushed red. Qing Luo. His voice rose in pitch. There was a hint of sharpness and ear-piercing in it. Yiqing Luo looked at Gu Jingyu from Zhou Xian's shoulder. Gu Jingyu's eyes were red and his muscles were tense. Are you telling the truth? You really don't have any feelings for me? As soon as he said that, there was silence all around. Tang Beiyuan placed a hand on her forehead. He had seen people who courted death, but he had never seen someone like this. At this juncture, Gu Jingyu still dared to say such ambiguous words to Qing Luo in front of the Overlord. Was this to show his true love, fearless and reckless? In order to move Qing Luo move himself? The atmosphere was strangely cold. After an unknown amount of time, the young lady who was leaning on Zhou Xian's shoulder had an indifferent expression on her face. Her pair of charming eyes were so calm that there wasn't any luster in them, as she fixed her gaze on Gu Jingyu. Everything I said was from the bottom of my heart. She answered without hesitation, and her tone was unprecedentedly serious and determined. Soon after, she raised her eyes and said word by word, "Before today I admired your character and was very happy to have a friend like you." Friend. Gu Jingyu murmured these two words. Suddenly he seemed to be crying and laughing at the same time. In other words, after today you and I are not even friends anymore? Because you have feelings for me. Yiqing Luo replied straightforwardly, "My identity will not allow any opposite sex who has other thoughts towards me to exist." Just because of the Overlord. Gu Jingyu's fingers clenched tightly. Chapter 30-29. Yiqing Luo's words were like a death sentence for Gu Jingyu. His whole body slumped down powerlessly, as though he had lost all his energy. But at the next instance he seemed to have thought of something as he raised his head abruptly with a burning gaze. "I saved you. Saved you once. If you want to repay me then don't be together with the Overlord." Gu Jingyu's words came out of the blue. Yiqing Luo somehow felt that everything was strange. There seemed to be something strange about it. But thinking deeply, she couldn't tell what was strange about it. Especially the request that Gu Jingyu raised, which made Yiqing Luo feel that something was amiss. Beiyuan. Zhou Xian was extremely displeased by Gu Jingyu's words as he called out Tang Beiyuan's name coldly. Tang Beiyuan quivered as she had no mood to watch the show as she immediately dragged Gu Jingyu away. Yiqing Luo stared at Gu Jingyu's body, which didn't struggle at all. In Tang Beiyuan's hands he was like a kite with a broken string without any energy. Her slender brows creased even tighter. She opened her mouth. "Wait." Tang Beiyuan's footsteps halted. Immediately following that, Yiqing Luo's voice rang. "Yes, it's a fact that you saved me. According to morality I should return this favor to you." Gu Jingyu's eyes lit up as he looked at Yiqing Luo in delight. "If it's something within my capabilities I can do it for you." Yiqing Luo's gaze was like a torch as she met Gu Jingyu's gaze calmly. "But if it concerns Zhou Xian, I'm sorry, I can't do it." Her gaze slowly shifted onto Zhou Xian's face. Her eyebrows became gentler and more delicate. Even the corners of her lips revealed a slight smile. "Whatever morality in front of Zhou Xian, it's nothing. For Zhou Xian I can even abandon the common people." She said it word by word as she looked at Zhou Xian seriously. This wasn't just a reply to Gu Jingyu's words. It was her promise to Zhou Xian. The warmth between the two eased the stiff atmosphere. Tang Beiyuan didn't give Gu Jingyu any chance to create any more trouble as she carried him and slipped out of the palace. Zhou Xian continued to carry Yiqing Luo as they walked towards the new courtyard. Along the way they saw many Imperial Palace's disciples in black training clothes. He could also see maids coming and going. When he saw this scene, everyone's reaction was almost the same. All of them were extremely shocked as they stuck their heads out, wanting to see exactly what that young lady looked like. Everyone in the imperial palace knew. 3 days ago, Dizun brought back a woman. Rumor had it that she was the woman the overlord doted on. It was obvious that the woman's injuries had mostly recovered on the day she was carried back to the imperial palace. He had fallen into a deep slumber only because he was physically exhausted. However, the overlord had given her all the medicinal pills that he had been saving for years. As long as they were useful to her, he had given them to her for free. It could be seen how infatuated the overlord was with that woman. However, hearsay was hearsay. It was completely different from the shock he felt when he saw it with his own eyes. When Yiqing Luo sensed the gazes from the surroundings, she couldn't help but rub her head against his chest. Her brows revealed a mischievous smile. So, this is the reason why you want to change to a new courtyard for me. Based on Dmo Xian's ability, he could totally bring him to the new courtyard swiftly. But Dmo Xian intentionally carried her, to be the center of attention along the way. Chapter 30:30. He was using his actions to show his identity in the imperial palace. Those 5 maids were personally punished by wind at the training ground. Then he intentionally announced the reason for the punishment. And because Gu Jingyu had improper thoughts towards Yiqing Luo, he was personally escorted back to Wine Valley sect by Tang Beiyuan. This was totally not giving Gu Jingyu any chance to make a comeback. Adding on to the fact that he personally carried her all the way to the new residence. All these added up were enough to shut the mouths of those imperial palace's disciples who were still guessing Yiqing Luo's identity. One must know. No matter whether it was Wind or Tang Beiyuan, they were all people who only listened to the overlord's commands. Even the imperial palace's granny had no advantage over Wind or the armament refining hall. The overlord had sent his confidant to do such an unimportant thing. It was enough to show how much importance the overlord placed on Yiqing Luo. Hence, after Yiqing Luo was carried to the new courtyard by Dmo Xian, this news had already spread like wildfire in the imperial palace. From the start to the end, it had not even exceeded the time for a stick of incense to burn. No one dared to discuss it. But in their hearts, they couldn't help but imagine the young lady who could make the overlord head over heels for her. Some of them used their gazes and expressions to communicate silently. Following that, the matter of Wind carrying those 5 maids and throwing them into the training ground was also spread. Immediately, the entire imperial palace was in an uproar. Looked like their imperial palace was really going to welcome their female mistress. The imperial palace's disciples looked at each other in dismay as they discussed in whispers. No one had discovered it. On the training ground, the 2 training team leaders who were standing on both sides exchanged glances. Following that, one of the training team leaders quietly left the training ground. Very quickly, the training team leader went around the main road and took an extremely secluded path. This path was something that even the janitor who cleaned the imperial palace would rarely go. Not to mention the other people in the imperial palace. The training team leader's footsteps were extremely fast. The withered leaves beneath his feet were rustling as he stepped on them. After a while, the training team leader stopped beside a fake mountain. He knocked a few times on the fake mountain. The pace was sometimes fast and sometimes slow. But moments later, the entire fake mountain suddenly shook slightly. Behind the fake mountain, a man in black attire with a murderous look walked out. This man could be seen from his temperament and attire. This was a death warrior. The captain lowered his voice and said, "Go and report that the overlord has brought back a woman." The overlord had sent Protector Feng and Hall Leader Tang to support that woman in front of everyone. The news has already spread throughout the imperial palace that this woman will be the future mistress of the imperial palace. The man of death did not say a word and just stared at him quietly. The captain shook his head, indicating that he had no other information. The death warrior turned around and quickly disappeared behind the rockery. When Dmo Xian carried Yiqing Luo into the new courtyard, Yiqing Luo's pupils couldn't help but widen. She straightened her back in shock as her charming eyes stared blankly at Dmo Xian. This is you." When Dmo Xian lowered his eyes to look at her, the expression on his face was extremely gentle. "Ever since I returned from the 21st century, I've been preparing this courtyard." His voice was low and husky like a feather, brushing against her eardrums and heart. "Do you like it?" Chapter 30:31. How could she not like it? From the moment they stepped into the courtyard. From the beginning to the end, it was built in the style of the 21st century. What came into view was a large green lawn. It was surrounded by beautiful purple and red flowers. Pure white walls and carved iron fences. On the left side of the flower bed and the resting pavilion wrapped in vines, there were 2 swings. If she remembered correctly. The style of this lawn was roughly similar to the Century Park in the 21st century. Zhou Xian carried her and walked further in. After the lawn there was a small training ground. Further in, it was a very modern room. Walking into the main room there was a huge living room. The floor was covered with a very soft carpet. Yiqing Luo could tell at a glance. This carpet was made with at least hundreds of precious feathers, with the most exquisite craftsmanship. If an ordinary person were to obtain such a blanket that could wrap themselves up in it, they would want to hang it on their body every day. But here it had become a carpet. Furthermore, almost every room was filled to the brim with blankets. The guest room in the backyard was at least a few hundred square meters. Every corner was covered with such precious blankets. How many precious feathers did it take? The interior decoration was also completely in line with the modern style. Tables, chairs, and the surrounding furnishings were all built up. There was even a sofa. Especially, when Yiqing Luo raised her head, she saw a few dazzling chandeliers hanging above the eaves. On that chandeliers, there were thin and small luminous pearls flickering. Yiqing Luo was completely stunned. How did you make so many things? Yiqing Luo's eyes widened, filled with disbelief. One must know these things. In the 21st century they could be seen everywhere. But in the Nirvana realm, it was impossible to have them. Whether it was this smooth and transparent table or the soft and comfortable sofa, or that dazzling chandeliers. None of these were things that could possibly exist in this era. Yiqing Luo could be sure. These were absolutely not brought back from the 21st century by Zhou Xian, who had the ability to travel through time and space. These things, at first glance, were indeed extremely similar to those things in the 21st century. But if one looked closely, he could still tell the difference. Everything that was filled with the style of the 21st century was made little by little using the things from the Nirvana realm. Yiqing Luo's heart was beating wildly, as though it was about to gush out from her throat. She struggled a little, wanting to touch these familiar things. Zhou Xian hugged her tightly. This place belongs to you. Put on your shoes and you can take your time to look around. He carried her into the bedroom. Just as he pushed open the door, Yiqing Luo was shocked by this scene. The whole room was filled with pink hues. Pink walls, pink curtains, pink soft bed. Yiqing Luo raised her head and stared at Zhou Xian suspiciously. Could it be that her man had other hobbies? What's with this pink screen? You don't like it? The smile on Zhou Xian's face froze as his peach blossom eyes revealed panic and helplessness. I thought you would like. Chapter 30-32. Zhou Xian didn't reply. He held her hands together, his large palms were warm. I remember in that plane, the place where you grew up. When you told me about your past, the glow in your eyes. His voice was very gentle. Mellow like a fine wine. Bit by bit it intoxicated Yiqing Luo. I know you like that place where you grew up very much. But you are my woman, in the future you will always be with me, living in this world. Zhou Xian's hand slowly moved upwards. His slender fingers with thin calluses caressed the skin on Yiqing Luo's face. This is a place of remembrance for you. If you want to go to that plane you can stay here. His gaze slowly swept across the surroundings, that pink-colored environment. Do you still remember in that plane when you told me about your past what you said to me? The hair on her forehead was brushed aside by the man's gentle fingers. Yiqing Luo's slightly red eyes trembled. She looked at Zhou Xian's peach blossom eyes, which contained a pool of spring water. The rippling light in his eyes, as though it wanted to swallow her up, so that she couldn't escape. You tried this color dress. Zhou Xian looked at Yiqing Luo's bewildered eyes, staring at him in a daze. With a face of infatuation, he couldn't help but laugh. He raised his hand, lightly tapped on Yiqing Luo's forehead. That gaze was filled with love and helplessness. Simply too sweet. After Zhou Xian's reminder, Yiqing Luo, who was immersed in beauty, suddenly remembered. Back in the 21st century she indeed pulled Zhou Xian to go shopping. And specially tried on. an extremely Lolita pink princess dress. At that time she indeed said this to Zhou Xian. "Ah Xian. Actually when I was very young I wanted to be like ordinary girls, to paint the entire room pink. Curtains, tables, chairs, sofa, everything, I want to make everything pink. But because of my identity, my world, other than black there is only white, I don't have the qualifications to like any color." Yiqing Luo pulled back her senses from her memories, and saw Zhou Xian's extremely anxious face. As though as long as she said she didn't like it, he immediately tore down this bedroom and rebuilt it. This man, she was moved and amused at the same time. Because of her words, Zhou Xian really remodeled a room with a pink screen for her. He was putting in so much effort to make her happy, to make her satisfied. What reason did she have to refuse him? In front of Yiqing Luo's eyes, it was as if fireworks had bloomed. There was a warm current in her heart, filling it up bit by bit. Ever since she woke up she had always felt that it was empty. Yiqing Luo's arms wrapped around Zhou Xian's neck and without any hesitation she planted her lips on Zhou Xian's lips. "I like Ah Xian's surprises and even more. Ah Xian." The moment the girl's soft lips pressed against his, Zhou Xian's pupils contracted. He abruptly tightened his arms and deepened the kiss. Their auras intertwined, until Zhou Xian noticed that Yiqing Luo's body was not used to such intense intimacy. After fiercely pecking Yiqing Luo's lips a few times, Zhou Xian released her. Yiqing Luo seemed as though she had lost all her energy as she laid limply in his arms. Chapter 30-33. 3,000 strands of hair poured down. The young lady's eyes were like silk, her cheeks flushed red. Because of the kiss, her eyes were half opened, adding a few hints of enchantment and laziness. Zhou Xian's eyes drooped as his breathing suddenly tightened. His body also turned stiff. How would Yiqing Luo not understand what Zhou Xian's reaction represented? Her cheeks turned even redder. Earlier when Gu Jingyu was about to barge into the room, she retrieved a stamina-replenishing pill from the profound phoenix ring and swallowed it in a timely manner. After nestling in Zhou Xian's arms for so long, finally she had recovered quite a bit of energy. And because of Zhou Xian's kiss she was once again weak and powerless. And under this situation, he actually still wanted to continue. Yiqing Luo facepalmed. Her man was really poisonous, teaching a pure young lady like her bad. "This is your home." Zhou Xian tightened his arms again as the young lady's petite body stuck close to him. Although the strength was strong, but it was controlled very well. It totally didn't cause any uncomfortable feeling to Yiqing Luo. His voice was still that gentle, just a little husky with some kind of suppressed emotions. He panted heavily as he changed the topic, trying his best to pacify his restlessness. "No matter if it's the imperial palace or the upper realm, I will let them know the only woman beside me is only you. Only Yiqing Luo." Yiqing Luo raised her head, her eyes reflected Zhou Xian's face as she revealed a smile. "I will also work hard to catch up to your footsteps, and then let everyone know that my Yiqing Luo's man, my husband, is you, Zhou Xian." Zhou Xian's eyes lit up slightly. His brows overflowed with a smile. Yiqing Luo's smile became thicker. Her curved eyes were tainted with a trace of craftiness. At this tender moment, Yiqing Luo suddenly moved her arm. The hands which were around Zhou Xian's neck moved to his shoulders. Following that, her waist borrowed strength and exerted force. The man's strong and tall body fell backwards. The soft big bed firmly received the man's body. Bright red flower petals were scattered on the pink bedding, giving off a refreshing fragrance. Zhou Xian's black hair scattered in between the petals. His purple robe also swept up a few ripples. Under the bright red petals, it made the man look even more magnificent and peerless, comparable to a god. Yiqing Luo's petite body covered his chest. She raised herself up and looked down at him. Her slender fingers caressed his face bit by bit. Between his eyebrows there was a wide smile. The girl bent down, her fine black hair falling on the man's body. Her lips curved into a charming smile and her fingers moved to his thin lips. "I like Ah Xian's surprises very much. So no matter what, I should return the favor." Her voice carried a unique charm and coquettishness. A pair of charming eyes gleamed with a charming and spirited light. Every smile, every frown, every movement was filled with charm. Xian's pupils contracted fiercely and there seemed to be some kind of emotion in his eyes, as it kept on surging. Just like a beast that was about to break out of its cage. Xian's change, Yiqing Luo naturally saw it. Her lips curled upwards, her smile became more and more charming, her body also followed closely, slightly lowering a little. Chapter 30-34. Lil Luo. He had to admit that the young lady's action made his eyes light up quickly. Xian called out Yiqing Luo's name hoarsely as his breathing became heavier. Yiqing Luo, who got the response, her eyes curved even more seductively. She was like a blossoming rose, emitting a fatal charm. Her hand slowly moved from Xian's lips to his chest. My return gift is. Yiqing Luo's hand, bit by bit, pulled open Xian's robe, revealing the man's underwear, as well as that large expanse of white and radiant chest. Her hand gently touched his chest. Xian's eyes instantly darkened and what followed was a surge of turbulent sparks. His body moved slightly. His thick palm was about to grab Yiqing Luo's wrist, to stop her following actions. But at the next moment, Yiqing Luo's palm pressed on the area of his heart. The young lady's soft touch made Xian's body stiffen instantly as his gaze unknowingly trembled. But the young lady had no intention to continue. She curved her long and narrow eyes. Those resplendent eyes were like stars embellished. Just like that, smiling, her palm pressed on his heart, not moving away. A burst of profound energy from the young lady's palm was transmitted into Xian's body. Xian's red eyes retracted a little. Didn't Chi tell you I'm already fine? He didn't stop Yiqing Luo's action. You've just woken up, don't waste your profound energy. It did. Yiqing Luo's smile was no longer the flirtatious charm which she intentionally teased Xian, but a rare seriousness. But I need to confirm it personally before I can be assured. Before the goo worm, when Xian was in the upper realm because he withdrew his clone to protect her, he suffered an internal injury. Later on, under the corrosion of the goo worm, switching back and forth the goo worm's mode caused a huge damage to his body. Even though Chi confidently told her that Xian's body had recovered fully and had advanced, she still wanted to confirm it personally. Warm, profound energy slowly spread through Xian's limbs and bones. After a full cycle, Yiqing Luo then removed her palm and propped herself up. You're smart, you didn't lie to me. Xian's body indeed didn't have any abnormalities. His heart, which had been hanging in the air, was finally at ease. Her hand had just moved away from his chest. The man, who had been lying on the bed obediently, suddenly moved his hand and grabbed her wrist. Is this your gift? Yiqing Luo's expression froze. Her cheeks were tinged with a trace of redness. The large palm on his wrist was like a ball of raging fire. She could clearly feel the heat from the man's body. Yiqing Luo's pink lips, which had been kissed till swollen, pursed her lips slightly as she lowered her eyes and whispered, personally examining your injury, isn't that a return gift? You want to stop halfway through your flirting? The man's low and husky voice revealed endless magnetism and evilness. Even if I agree, do you think this place will agree? His pointed words made Yiqing Luo's face turn even redder. All right, facing Xian. She had the courage to flirt with him. But she didn't have the courage to be flirted with. After all, her flirting with him and him flirting with her were totally not on the same level. The minute Xian flirted with her, she would throw away her helmet and armor in minutes, surrendering and admitting defeat. Chapter 30-35. Yiqing Luo had just finished her words. Her waist was lifted up by a force. Immediately following that, she fell onto the soft big bed. The man's warm body pressed tightly against her. She and Xian exchanged positions. A very orthodox position. Male on. Female on. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes trembled violently, her little hands curled up slightly as she clutched Xian's collar tightly. When she opened her eyes, she met the man's handsome face. Especially that pair of long and narrow peach blossom eyes, which were like stars embellished with flowing lights and vibrant colors, were absorbing her soul bit by bit. Yiqing Luo's heart suddenly accelerated. The man bowed his head, raised his eyebrows and smiled lightly, his thin lips pressed on the skin of her face, slowly moving downwards. Finally it stopped at her lips. A warm and elegant breath wrapped around Yiqing Luo. causing Yiqing Luo's delicate body to tremble from time to time. Yiqing Luo couldn't help but close her eyes. Delicate moans, the breath also became warm. The man's thin lips pressed down. A very gentle, very loving touch. The elegant sandalwood smell lingered between the two. Yiqing Luo's state of mind gradually was confused. But just when Yiqing Luo thought Damo Xian was going to continue the next step, Damo Xian slowly propped up his body, lying sideways next to her. Yiqing Luo closed her eyes, waited for a long time, and sensed that something was wrong. The moment she opened her eyes, she saw Damo Xian by the side, smiling at her elegantly. In his eyes, there was an obvious teasing smile. Yiqing Luo's face instantly turned red. You did it on purpose. This man actually, after teasing her, he just stood by and watched. Was he deliberately trying to see her embarrassed? Damo Xian laughed lightly. In the laughter there was endless husky magnetism. His hand, stretched over, embraced Yiqing Luo's delicate body. Yiqing Luo struggled, puffed up her cheeks and said angrily, "You are rejecting my gift. If you don't want it, I won't give it to you." Damo Xian laughed even more joyfully. His long arms tightly encircled her, covering the young girl's petite body completely in his chest. The man's slender fingers gently slid over the young girl's back. Her movements were extremely gentle. Why would I reject this reciprocal gift? Damo Xian leaned close to her ear as he chuckled, "Don't tell me you still can't feel it?" As he spoke, he moved a little. How could Yiqing Luo not feel it? Her face was getting redder. She lowered her head, bit her pink lips, and squeezed her head against the man's chest. Damo Xian sighed softly and tightened his arms even more. "Don't move. If you move again, I might really not have the willpower to take care of your body." A certain softness in Yiqing Luo's heart seemed to have been poked. The resentment in her eyes instantly became as gentle as water. This man, no matter how unbearable it was for him to endure it, he was also thinking about her body. He woke up after sleeping for 3 days and 3 nights. Even if he had the essence chi pill to replenish his energy, he was afraid that he would not be able to withstand Damo Xian's demand. She was very clear about this. She just felt uncomfortable looking at Damo Xian. But she couldn't bear to do it. So there was that scene of her handing herself over. Yiqing Luo's pink lips rose, smiling contentedly as she hugged Damo Xian's waist with both hands. "Ah Xian, you're so good." Damo Xian smiled bitterly. "This compliment, I really don't want it." God knows if he could continue to restrain himself. The little woman in his arms didn't understand how attractive she was to him at all. Chapter 30-36. This smile was so enchanting that it could cause the downfall of a nation. But this enchanting smile made Damo Xian's brows twitch as an ominous premonition arose in his heart. As expected, the next moment, Yiqing Luo's alluring face was already close to him. She opened her mouth and bit his neck with her pink and moist lips. She didn't use much strength, and her little tongue touched from time to time. Damo Xian's eyes darkened as his fingers clasped the young lady's slender waist tightly. "Lil Luo, don't play with fire." Yiqing Luo giggled. Her smile was devilish and charming. Her petite body in his arms arched here and there, endlessly seeking death. Yiqing Luo stuck close to Damo Xian. Naturally, she could clearly feel his body's reaction. "Lil Luo. Damo Xian gritted his teeth. "Be careful of self-immolation." That suppressed word seemed to be squeezed out from the gaps of his teeth. I'm not playing with fire. I'm just weak and have no energy. No matter how I lie down, I can't sit still." Yiqing Luo deliberately used a coquettish tone as she acted coquettishly, rubbing her little face into Damo Xian's arms. This rubbing decisively made Damo Xian's body stiffen even more. Even though it was separated by a robe, Yiqing Luo could feel the man's body heat gradually rising. Seeing Damo Xian's expression had turned extremely ugly and his eyes were filled with fiery red light. Yiqing Luo withdrew her hand contentedly and snorted, "Let you see me embarrassed. This is giving you a taste of your own medicine." Saying that, Yiqing Luo pushed Damo Xian's chest away and was about to get up from the bed. The moment she sat up straight, her wrist was suddenly pulled by the man's strength. She fell into the man's arms once again. What greeted her was an overwhelming masculine aura. The overbearing kiss made Yiqing Luo stunned, until Damo Xian's wide palm probed her skin. The slightly cold fingertips made Yiqing Luo quiver. Her eyes were misty as she stared at Xian, making the last struggle. Xian, my body has no energy, no energy. She hadn't finished her words. The man pulled her hand down. Yiqing Luo's hand trembled, but she wasn't able to fight against his strength. The man's husky and magnetic voice carried a bewitching charm as he whispered into her ear. Luo, there are many other ways that don't consume energy. Extinguish the fire. He deliberately lowered his voice when he said the last two words. It was very seductive. Yiqing Luo instantly wanted to cry but had no tears as her heart was filled with vexation. As expected, she had no chance of winning in flirting with Xian. Xian flirted with her at any moment. Yiqing Luo versus Xian, the nth round. Once again, Yiqing Luo fell into a deep sleep in this pink bedroom, which ended. When Yiqing Luo woke up again, it was already noon the next day. She opened her eyes. Xian was already dressed neatly as he sat by the side, handling the important affairs of the imperial palace. He was well-dressed and had an outstanding temperament. He was completely different from the beast from yesterday. Yiqing Luo moved and was just about to lift the quilt on her. However, her hands were so sore that she sucked in a breath of cold air. Especially her 10 fingers, as though they had been cut off and reassembled. Thinking of yesterday, Xian said to extinguish the fire without consuming energy. Yiqing Luo was so embarrassed that she couldn't wait to bury herself into the pillow. She swore that she would never flirt with Xian, that beast, ever again. Yiqing Luo's voice attracted the man's attention. Chapter 30-37. Yiqing Luo turned around with all her might, not willing to bother about him. Xian bent down and placed one hand on her body through the blanket as he spoke gently. All right, since you're awake, get up and eat something. Although there are elemental pills to replenish your energy, but you still need to eat. Yiqing Luo twisted her sore hand as she pursed her lips tightly and even harumphed loudly to express her anger. The young lady's rare demeanor made the smile on Xian's face even more obvious. Only he was able to see such an agile little Luo. Xian's eyes were filled with adoration as he scooped her together with the pink blanket into his arms. Even if you're angry, you still need to eat something first to fill your stomach before you have the energy to be angry with me, isn't that so? This tone seemed as though he was coaxing a little pet, making Yiqing Luo's lips twitched. What did he mean by eating until she had the energy to be angry with him? At this moment, according to the usual routine, shouldn't he be hugging her and expressing his mistake warmly and apologetically, promising that he would absolutely not use this kind of method to torment her in the future? This man, why didn't he play his cards according to the routine? As though he could see through Yiqing Luo's thoughts. Xian's chin, separated by the blanket, pillowed beside her ear as he laughed softly. I don't want to lie to you because last night was great. In the future there will be more other ways to extinguish the fire, so I'm unable to give you this guarantee. Yiqing Luo. Towards Xian's words, she really didn't know if she should express gratitude or anger. In the end, Yiqing Luo was half coaxed and half carried by Xian as she drank a bowl of porridge which was made from precious herbs. After Yiqing Luo had her fill, coupled with Xian's intentional flattery and gentle words, the anger in Yiqing Luo's heart had more or less subsided. Xian knew Yiqing Luo's character, so he changed the topic. During this period of time, stay in the imperial palace to rest and follow me to settle the matter between Secluded Palace and Hell Palace. As for the West Continent, you don't need to worry. Yan Xiaoyi, Xiao Jin, and the others have already brought the Miao tribe's holy maiden to the West Continent. With the Miao tribe's holy maiden around, Long Yunzhan's poison will not be a problem. Mentioning this matter, how could Yiqing Luo still care about what had happened yesterday? Throwing a tantrum? She immediately sat up straight and turned her head. You went to the West Continent? What about the Miao people? The battle with the two from the Netherworld Palace. The entire Miao tribe was basically destroyed. When Xian appeared, he spared the lives of the Miao tribesmen on account of Miao Yi's help. However, the two from the Underworld Palace and the disciples from the Palace of Gloom had killed many of the Miao clansmen. At this time, Miao Yi was still heading towards the West Continent. Wouldn't that deepen the prejudice the Miao people had against Miao Yi? The survivors of the Miao tribe, including the injured tribesmen, number about 1,200 people. Xian rubbed her head. These 1,200 people, if after this huge battle, know how to unite and survive, it's not impossible to rebuild the Miao tribe. As for the Miao tribe's holy maiden, the imperial palace has sent out 2,000 disciples to stay in the Miao tribe, to accompany the Miao clansmen to rebuild the Miao tribe. The condition is in exchange for the Miao tribe's holy maiden, to work for the imperial palace for 1 month. The Miao clansmen will not agree to it. Yiqing Luo. Indeed, it was impossible not to agree to it. Chapter 30-38. After all, the imperial palace's disciples were stationed in the Miao tribe. This not only represented that the Miao tribe had been rebuilt with an additional 2,000 men's strength, but it represented that the imperial palace had become the Miao tribe's backing. With the imperial palace's protection, the Miao tribe's future development would be much smoother. Moreover, the Miao tribe's holy maiden and the overlord's pampered daughter were brothers. Handing the Miao tribe's holy maiden over to the imperial palace, there wouldn't be any accidents. The Miao tribesmen naturally wouldn't be too worried about the Miao tribe's holy maiden. Miao Yi had sold herself to the imperial palace for a month for the Miao tribe's future. The Miao tribesmen were extremely grateful, so how could they possibly blame Miao Yi for leaving the Miao tribe at this critical juncture? When Yiqing Luo heard that, her little body pounced into Xianmo Xian's arms as her arms wrapped around his neck and gave him a smack on the cheek. This man was always able to guess all of her worries, and he had arranged everything appropriately. Such a powerful man. To sweep away all the obstacles for herself. If she didn't work hard to raise her profound grade, to chase up to Xianmo Xian's footsteps and work hard to walk side by side with him, wouldn't that be letting down Xianmo Xian's efforts? Instantly, Yiqing Luo's fighting spirit soared as her little fists clenched tightly. I've decided, after the Nether Palace's matters are settled, we'll go to the East and South continents to get the sacred beast bead and head to the upper realm. Xianmo Xian pinched her nose as he gave a low laugh. I thought you had already decided. You asked Qinuesec's sovereign to automatically send the black tortoise sacred beast bead to me, isn't it to let me make up my mind? Yiqing Luo shook her little head as the man's finger fell from her nose. That's not it, it's just the right timing. Xianmo Xian scooped her petite body into his arms. I understand you, you're not someone who is content with the current situation. Yiqing Luo didn't struggle any further as she leaned into Xianmo Xian's arms, placing her chin on his chest as she raised her head. This battle with the Palace of Darkness, this battle with the Hell Sect, I deeply understood the disparity between myself and them. If it wasn't for my god relic and profound jade heart, I would absolutely not be Nether Palace and Hell Palace's opponent. Indeed, I am not someone who is content with the status quo. I want to protect you, I want to protect my friends just like you want to protect me. I can't hurt myself every time to make myself stronger. So, I want to make myself stronger. Her tone was sonorous and forceful, and it carried a sense of determination. A pair of charming eyes emitted a scorching luster. 4 pairs of eyes met and Xianmo Xian's eyes revealed a faint smile. That smile was peerless. His slender fingers were slightly cold as he gently stroked her forehead. He smiled, his tone helpless, but it was full of pampering. So, I have already sent someone to bring a letter to Xiao Yu, asking him to find the sacred beast pearl guarded by the Three Springs sect. Was this man a roundworm in her stomach? As for other matters, don't think too much about them. After you recover, I'll accompany you to the East and South continents. Xianmo Xian pinched her cheeks. Don't think of sneaking in alone, otherwise. If I catch you back and punish you, you know it. Yiqing Luo. She inexplicably recalled the scene last night. Her face sunk, expressing that she didn't want to understand. Chapter 30-39. Regarding the secluded palace's matter, the Imperial Palace's disciples and Peach Blossom 3000 have already joined forces to investigate. Xianmo Xian could tell what Yiqing Luo was thinking as he bent down and kissed her lips. I know you can't sit still. These few days I'll bring you to the Underworld Palace to have some fun. By the time we return, the secluded palace's investigation should have reached the Imperial Palace. Then we'll consider other matters. Yiqing Luo's eyes lit up. Underworld Palace? But play is play, you have to listen to me. Xianmo Xian poked Yiqing Luo's forehead as he looked at her sparkling eyes. His lips unknowingly curled upwards. No problem. Yiqing Luo nodded her head vigorously. As long as she wasn't locked on the bed, taking various pills to nourish her body. Nothing was a problem. especially when she followed Zhou Xian to the underworld palace to have some fun. But Yiqing Luo's excitement and agitation vanished the next day when she followed Zhou Xian to the underworld palace. Because she was trapped in the carriage. And it was escorted by Little Nine, the noble sacred beast nine-tailed fox. Not only Little Nine. There were also 4 fairy-like female attendants standing around the carriage. As for her, her range of movement was limited to this carriage. Yiqing Luo. She had no way to resist. She wanted to have some fun at the underworld palace. She could only listen to him obediently. Sit in the carriage obediently. Yiqing Luo put on a sour face as she watched a certain overlord casually throw Xiaba and Leng Yan, who were badly mutilated, without a single piece of intact skin. Leng Yan was in so much pain that he sucked in a breath of cold air. His mouth, which had its tongue cut off, kept making sounds. Xiaba laid on the ground as he weakly howled, "Kill us! Kill us!" The ground was quickly dyed red by their blood. These 2 people's treatment in the imperial palace was really tragic. At this moment 2 young men dressed in black, around 17 to 18 years old, walked over. You bring them up." Zhou Xian instructed the 2 youngsters as he lifted the curtains of the carriage and stepped into it. The 2 youngsters carried Xiaba and Leng Yan agilely as they walked straight ahead. His speed was extremely fast and he disappeared in the blink of an eye. Yiqing Luo's charming eyes stared intently at Zhou Xian as he walked towards her and sat beside her. He even stretched out his hand and hugged her into his embrace. The corners of his eyes twitched uncontrollably. "You intend to let me sit in this carriage for the entire day?" Yiqing Luo elbowed his abdomen. Zhou Xian's large palm wrapped around her wrist. Lowering his head, his thin lips pressed against her fair neck. "I'm taking you to the underworld palace to settle the score." "So?" Yiqing Luo's delicate body trembled as she shrank back to avoid the man's mischief. "Although I'm a venerable sovereign, I'm taking you with me. I can't ignore the chief god's law." Zhou Xian didn't stop Yiqing Luo from avoiding him as he tightly rested his chin on her shoulder and spoke in a low and hoarse voice, "Bringing you to the earth realm to find trouble with the underworld palace. There must be a dignified reason." Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes. She immediately understood the meaning behind Zhou Xian's words. Every interface had its own rules. For example, the lower realm did not allow people from the upper realm to appear. The upper realm did not allow people from the lower realm who did not have the qualifications to go to the upper realm to appear. Like Yiqing Luo, if she was brought to the earth realm by Zhou Xian, it would be fine if she wasn't discovered. Once she was discovered, the balance historian had the right to detain her. Chapter 30-40. They were looking for trouble with the Hell Palace. Naturally, it would attract the attention of the people from the upper planes. Yiqing Luo's existence would naturally attract the attention of the people from the upper planes. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, Zhou Xian had to have a reasonable reason. A reason which could convince everyone to accept Yiqing Luo, a person from the lower realm appearing in the upper realm. In fact, to take action against the Hell Palace. Zhou Xian could directly take action. But Zhou Xian had taken into consideration Yiqing Luo's thoughts, so he thought of a way to bring her along to settle the scores personally. After all, when Yiqing Luo had the right to ascend to the upper realm, then she would settle the scores with the people from the Hell Palace. This heat had long passed. The underworld palace would also be able to completely disregard this matter. Yiqing Luo had been sleeping in Zhou Xian's arms. But moments later, Zhou Xian called out her name. She opened her eyes and the surroundings were pitch black space. She could faintly see a few wisps of strange aura floating in the air. That pitch black, meandering and spiraling, extended far into the distance, totally unable to see the boundary. Yiqing Luo merely used her senses to scan and understood. That was Xiaba and Leng Yan's evil qi. In other words, they had already reached the Hell Palace. Yiqing Luo was slightly shocked. Was it so easy to come to the upper realm? She didn't feel any discomfort at all. Sit here properly, leave the rest to me. Zhou Xian's gentle kiss landed on her forehead. When Yiqing Luo raised her eyes, she only saw the back view of the man walking out of the carriage. His purple robe billowed, like the rolling clouds in the black space. Silky black hair scattered behind him. That posture, noble and elegant like a god of the world, unattainable. The man walked out of the carriage in big strides. Alei and Ayu, the two guards, were already carrying the two half-dead men standing there waiting for orders. Dmo Xian's expression no longer had any tenderness and sweetness. It was a treacherous, icy cold intent. He stood in between the guards and stopped in his tracks. Following that, his wide sleeves waved slightly. In an instant, an incomparably tyrannical energy surged forward in a direction that seemed to have no end in sight. Bam! That energy seemed to have hit the air. Endless dark force exploded in this pitch-black space. Powerful dark force enveloped the entire space. However, sitting in the carriage, Yiqing Luo didn't have any other feelings. She furrowed her brows. No matter how much Dmo Xian cared about her existence and restrained his power, it was impossible for her not to sense any energy. Unless, Yiqing Luo's gaze immediately fell onto those four female attendants who were brimming with immortal qi. Sure enough, there was a layer of faint purple light in their palms. Barrier. Dmo Xian conjured a barrier to protect the carriage. No matter how intense the battle in the outside world was, she who was protected by the barrier would not be affected in the slightest. Just as Yiqing Luo was in a dilemma about the enchantment. Suddenly, a rough voice rang out in this quiet pitch-black space. What kind of dog is this? Do you know what this place is? Soon after, a hole seemed to be torn open in the pitch-black space. A huge door appeared out of thin air. A middle-aged man walked out from the door. He was dirty and unkempt. That middle-aged man rubbed his nose as he walked forward with a fiendish look. When his gaze met Dmo Xian. Chapter 3041. Lord Overlord. The middle-aged man's face, which was so dirty that its color could not be seen, had now turned ghastly pale. His violent aura was also restrained. I didn't know that Overlord had arrived. Sorry for not coming out to meet you. Sorry for not coming out to meet you. No matter how arrogant the underworld palace was, no matter how disregarding the secular world. But towards the rumors of Dmo Xian, they had heard of it. There were also many brothers who died in Dmo Xian's hands. Could be said that the underworld palace could defy the heavens, defy the earth and defy the air. But they did not dare to defy Dmo Xian. Even if Dmo Xian just stood there without saying a word, the imposing aura from his body was enough to suppress that middle-aged man, making breathing extremely difficult. This lord is here to send two people to the underworld palace. Dmo Xian's deep and cold voice was emotionless, without any trace of emotion. The middle-aged man only felt his heart tightening as he raised his head apprehensively, looking at Dmo Xian. Who are they? To trouble Overlord to send them personally. Bam. The middle-aged man's voice just fell. Two lumps of flesh and blood were thrown at his feet. Those two lumps were covered in blood. When they were thrown on the ground, they hit the middle-aged man's feet, staining with a large patch of blood. The middle-aged man suppressed the urge to stretch out his feet, to kick these two lumps out as he asked in confusion, This is. Save me. At his feet, the person who was nearer suddenly grabbed the middle-aged man's hand as he spoke weakly. The middle-aged man's face sunk. With his originally irritable temperament, how could he tolerate someone grabbing his feet? Previously, when he saw these two lumps of bloody things, it was because these two lumps were brought by Dmo Xian. Now it was completely a body's conditioned reflex. The middle-aged man immediately kicked the person who was grabbing his feet and sent him flying. The bloody thing screamed as its body flew out. That bloody lump rolled several rounds on the ground. Finally, it lay face up on the ground. Under the messy hair revealed that barely recognizable face. The middle-aged man's eyes widened as he swiftly rushed over. Lord hell. But when the middle-aged man was about to rush in front of Xiaba, an invisible force blocked the middle-aged man's path. The middle-aged man's pupils constricted. Seeing Xiaba in such a state, he was so angry that his whole body stiffened. He looked in the direction of the power. Clenching his fists tightly, he suppressed the fear in his heart and gritted his teeth. What is the meaning of this, Lord Dizun? Which is to say, you admit that these two people are from your Hell Palace. Dmo Xian's eyes were indifferent as his chilly gaze swept past him. The powerful pressure caused the middle-aged man's heart to be filled with fear. He turned his head with an ugly expression and looked at the other person who was badly mutilated. Upon closer inspection, it wasn't difficult to tell that it was Ling Yan. Ling Yan was the most destructive person in the Underworld Palace. When the middle-aged man saw that Ling Yan was lying motionless on the ground like a dog, the middle-aged man's face darkened. He stared furiously at Zhou Xian. I wonder how did these two from the underworld palace offend the overlord? Lord Dizun is so ruthless. This lord had personally sent them back, is to have a good talk with the underworld palace, on how your underworld palace had offended this lord. Zhou Xian didn't have the slightest intention of being courteous, as his thin lips curled into a sneer. These words made the middle-aged man's face turn pale, but when he saw the two people lying on the ground badly mutilated. Chapter 30-42. Everyone could see that Xiaba and Ling Yan were completely crippled. Now they were still hanging by a breath. That must be because Zhou Xian used some special method or elixir, living a life worse than death. That was the heaviest punishment. Overlord, this is the Lord of Hell of our Hell Palace. How dare you injure the Lord of Hell of my underworld palace to such a state? The middle-aged man shouted angrily. Does Overlord want to declare war on the Hell Palace? Zhou Xian raised his eyebrows. But the corner of his eyes fell on the middle-aged man. That made the middle-aged man's back shiver. His fierce words and stern expression immediately disappeared. Zhou Xian's thin lips curled up slightly. He looked evil but revealed a bone-piercing chill. Lord of Hell Palace? The middle-aged man was aghast and shrunk his neck in fear. Since he's the Lord of the Hell Palace, then his actions represent the entire Hell Palace, right? Zhou Xian seemed as though he didn't see his fear as he asked indifferently with an icy smile. His tone was very calm, and there was no ripple in it. But when Zhou Xian spat out the last two words, the middle-aged man only felt that the air around him seemed to solidify. The endless coldness was accompanied by a surging murderous aura. He couldn't breathe at all under the pressure. The middle-aged man was forced to take a few steps back. His body kept trembling at a speed visible to the naked eye. What did Lord Hell Palace do to annoy Overlord? He injured this sovereign's woman. As Zhou Xian's cold voice sounded, then in the air there suddenly surged a strong dark force. Like a stormy sea it rushed down. The middle-aged man didn't even have a chance to react. Bang! A mouthful of blood was spat out from his mouth. His whole body suddenly flew backward. His body smashed heavily on the door which looked like it was torn apart. Immediately he fell heavily on the ground. Boom boom boom. Another deafening roar rang out. The ground collapsed. Especially where the middle-aged man fell there was a deep mark. Old lie. All of a sudden a few furious voices rang out from the Hell sect. Soon after, a few men who were about the same age as the middle-aged man and were also slovenly and unkempt rushed out. One of them helped the middle-aged man lying on the ground up. The rest of them stood in front of the middle-aged man as they stared furiously at Zhou Xian's direction. Overlord, Hell Palace has always been indifferent to worldly affairs, so how could they possibly hurt your woman? Overlord, it's better for you to investigate this thoroughly. Zhou Xian's hands were placed behind his back in a dignified manner. His pair of peach blossom eyes glanced at those few people with a smile that didn't look like a smile. His gaze, however, as soon as it landed on those people, suddenly Zhou Xian's robes fluttered without any wind. Powerful and majestic energy followed closely behind and shrouded him. Bang bang bang. Just like the middle-aged man, those people were sent flying by the attack. On the ground, a few people were scattered all over the place. If he could make a move, he would definitely not make a fuss. Zhou Xian couldn't even be bothered to look them in the eye. You. The middle-aged man was originally seriously injured by Zhou Xian, and on seeing Zhou Xian's barbaric action, he was so infuriated that he spat out another mouthful of blood. You're simply too much. The people from Hell Palace were arrogant and despotic and cruel to the extreme. They had never suffered such humiliation before. Unexpectedly, the legendary Overlord. Chapter 30-43. Bully intolerably? Zhou Xian narrowed his shimmering peach blossom eyes as he held in a faint smile and murmured these four words. Those few people from Hell Palace only felt an ominous premonition pervading their hearts. Their bodies instinctively wanted to escape. But, the next moment, another raging surge of profound energy came surging over. Everyone only felt a burst of tearing pain all over their bodies, tearing them apart. The few of them screamed out in pain at the same time. Since you all feel that this lord is bullying intolerably, If this lord doesn't accept these 4 words, wouldn't it be letting down your judgment of this lord? Zhou Xian's icy cold voice was filled with chilliness. Those few people, how would they dare to open their mouths to refute? Those few people sprawled on the ground and curled up for a while. The middle-aged man, who was addressed as Old Lai, slowly supported himself against the wall behind him and stood up. Zhou Xian, what exactly do you want? Please say it directly. He gritted his teeth as his scarlet eyes widened, suppressing the rage in his heart. Zhou Xian raised his brows disapprovingly. This lord just wants to bully others intolerably. Those few people's faces sunk and all of them had an angry and embarrassed expression. But due to the disparity in strength between themselves and Zhou Xian, they couldn't flare up at all. If it was any other ordinary person injuring their Hell Palace's people, even if they had to perish together, they would join hands to kill the other party. But the other party was Zhou Xian, the rumored, mysterious and honorable Lord Zhou Xian. Just based on Zhou Xian's effortless strength, he had already pushed the group of them to the ground and even suffered internal injuries. They wanted to join hands to gang up on Zhou Xian. This was an impossible matter. Moreover, it was highly possible that their act of joining hands would infuriate Zhou Xian and he would wash the Hell Palace with blood. There must be some misunderstanding. Lord Zhou Xian, please investigate clearly. Old Lai clenched his teeth, trying his best to make his tone sound more gentle. The few of them didn't forget to sneak a glance at the side, at the carriage that was covered by white muslin. Vaguely they could see a slender figure sitting in the carriage. She must be the Overlord's woman. Old Lai's eyes flashed and he suddenly knelt down in the direction of the palanquin. Madam, the Underworld Palace has been cultivating in the Underworld Palace recently, and has not harmed anyone. Speaking until here, Lao Lai paused. Then he turned his gaze to Evil Tyrant and said, the only time I've been able to go out is when Lord Hell and Ling Yen descended to the lower realms to repay the favor they owed me over the years. He raised his head carefully and looked in the direction of the sedan. Lord Hell and Ling Yen are heading down to the lower realm to settle some matters. They definitely won't hurt Madam. In the eyes of the people from the Underworld Palace, she was able to become the Overlord's woman. It was impossible for him to be someone from the lower realm. Xiaba and Ling Yen had gone to the lower realm to take care of some matters. How could he have offended the Overlord's woman? This is definitely a misunderstanding. Your Majesty and Madam, please investigate this. Lao Lai added. As he spoke, he kowtowed a few times. Dong 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 sounds. Yiqing Luo felt pain in her ears. Her slender brows rose slightly. This Underworld Palace really cared about their brotherly ties. Evil Tyrant and Ling Yen had become crippled, thrown right in front of them. They had never thought of giving up on these 2 crippled people. They were still trying their best to speak up for these 2 crippled people. She curled her pink lips as her chilly voice floated out from the muslin. Chapter 3044. Old Lai's kowtowing action halted. The others were also stunned. Their gazes swiftly shot towards Xiaba and Ling Yen. Lower realm? The Overlord's woman ran down to the lower realm? And coincidentally met Xiaba and Ling Yen? Towards Xiaba and Ling Yan's character, they had been together for many years, so they naturally understood it. Even in the lower realm, once they didn't follow their wishes, hatred could possibly lead to a huge battle. This time, Xiaba and Ling Yen had offended the Overlord's woman? Hearing Yiqing Luo's words, those Hell Palace's people who thought it was a misunderstanding kept their mouths shut, not daring to open their mouths. Since the Lord of Hell Palace hurt my woman, then it means that your Hell Palace is targeting my woman. Zhou Xian squinted his long peach blossom eyes. Those few didn't dare to reply. Hurt my woman, shouldn't I settle the score with you? Zhou Xian's lips curled upwards as endless cold rays and terrifying aura revolved around him. Hearing Zhou Xian's high-sounding reason, Yiqing Luo couldn't help but burst out laughing. Based on Zhou Xian's character, he would absolutely wipe out the Hell Palace directly. But in order to take care of her, he used the most complicated method. He only wanted to pave the way for her to personally take revenge. Looking at the man's tall and broad back view, Yiqing Luo's eyes curved as she couldn't hide the happiness and sweetness. However, Yiqing Luo felt happiness and sweetness. But to the few Hell Palace's people, this was simply a death sentence. The few Hell Palace's people slowly gathered together. Their expressions congealed as they occasionally looked towards Xiaba and Leng Yan, who were sprawled on the ground. Their hearts were silently pondering on how to settle this matter. It was just to return a favor to the lower realm. How did they offend the Overlord? The Hell Palace's people, who had always dissed the heavens and earth, felt helpless. Just at this moment, a voice filled with hatred came nearer. That slut, what kind of madam is she? She's just a slut from the lower realm. As that voice got nearer, in the dark space, a white-robed lady who was filled with fairy-like aura swayed as she walked over. The lady was dressed in white gauze and her jet-black hair was fixed with a jade hairpin. As she approached, through the veil, Yiqing Luo could see the lady's face. She was exquisite, young and very beautiful. That's right, Mei, who should have died in the battle between the Miao tribe and the Palace of Darkness. Yiqing Luo remembered. Under her design, Mei and Yan Zhenfei were squashed into meat patties by the group of semi-finished corpses. Plum actually escaped? Then, where was Yan Zhenfei? People from the mortal world? Lao Lai noticed Mei's choice of words and asked with a frown. Mei's venomous gaze swept across Yiqing Luo's carriage. Yes. She's from the lower realm. How can someone from the lower domain come to the earth domain? Lao Lai seemed to have found a breakthrough. His expression suddenly froze. Your Excellency, this is against the rules. Heh, a light and sweet-sounding sneer came from behind the veil. The girl's lazy voice was filled with endless disdain. Could it be that the Lord of Hell of the Underworld Palace going to the lower realms and attempting to destroy them and devour their space is in line with the rules? Old Lai's face turned red, unable to refute. Yiqing Luo. Mei's venomous voice interrupted the conversation between Old Lai and Yiqing Luo. Step by step she neared the carriage. Finally she stood in front of the four maids. Chapter 3045. Balanced Historian? When these four words came out from Mei's mouth, Hell Palace's people's faces turned black. Once the Balanced Historian arrived, not only the Overlord's woman couldn't escape, their Hell Palace's people couldn't escape the crime of sneaking into the lower realm to create trouble. Who are you? How dare you come to the Hell Palace to create trouble? Old Lai immediately targeted Mei as he gritted his teeth and shouted angrily, You keep saying that the Overlord's woman is from the lower realm. Since she's from the lower realm, how did you know? How I know is not important. Mei stared at Yiqing Luo coldly. What's important is, she's a lowly person from the lower realm. She's not fit to stand beside the Overlord, nor is she worthy for the Overlord to back her up. The last part of the sentence. Mei's words were squeezed out from the gaps of her teeth. She totally didn't conceal her jealousy and resentment. Pop. The crisp sound of a slap rang out. Mei's body was smashed into pieces as she flew backwards and hit the ground. Alei stared at Mei and said coldly, Shut up, how dare you insult the Imperial Palace's future mistress? Half of Mei's face was swollen from the slap, and there was even a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth. Imperial Palace. Future mistress. Ha ha ha. Mei let out a low laugh. While murmuring these words, he laughed like a madman. She laughed and laughed. Her laughter became extremely strange. Suddenly Mei raised her head, her deep black eyes fixed on Zhou Xian. Overlord. These are your personal guards, their attitude is your attitude. Future mistress. Was promised to her by you. Am I right? Zhou Xian's eyes were fixed on Zhou Xian. His eyes were so dark that not even the slightest hint of emotion could be seen. It revealed some urgency and craziness. Faintly she could sense a flash of pain and despair in that pair of eyes. Zhou Xian frowned slightly as his peach blossom eyes turned, but he had no intention to look at Mei. But Yiqing Luo could see a trace of impatience from Zhou Xian's eyes, but he seemed to be apprehensive about something. He could tell. Zhou Xian didn't want to waste time with Mei. But apparently Mei had completely lost her mind. Seeing that Zhou Xian did not reply in time, she then took a few steps towards Zhou Xian's direction. His young and delicate face was twisted with madness. Overlord, she's just a lowly person from the lower world. She'll only be a burden to you if she stays by your side. She's just using your power to achieve her own goals. She doesn't deserve you, she doesn't deserve you. She screamed hysterically. His ferocious and terrifying pupils were bloodshot. She approached Zhou Xian. She raised her hands and tried to hug Zhou Xian. But just as Plum was 3 steps away from Zhou Xian, a figure suddenly appeared in front of Zhou Xian. It was Yu. The young man, who was dressed in a tight suit, raised his leg and kicked Mei's chest without hesitation. Yu did not show any mercy in this kick. The kick made Mei wail in pain. She fell to the ground. A crater was formed on the ground. Mei's 5 viscera and 6 bowels were shaken to the point that they were about to split open. Blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. Why? Just because she's young, just because she's beautiful. Mei screamed unwillingly. Her voice was hoarse and she coughed out a big mouthful of blood as she screamed. Chapter 3046. She doesn't have any ability and only knows how to rely on your power to put on airs in the lowly lower realm, committing all sorts of atrocities. What right does she have to stand by your side? Mei roared and roared as she suddenly burst into tears. Why? I've waited for you for so long. So long you're not willing to take a look at me. A sudden sobbing tone. It made Yiqing Luo stunned. Through the veil, Yiqing Luo could clearly see that Mei's horribly distorted face, which could no longer be restored, with 2 streaks of tears, crying pitifully. Yiqing Luo. This was simply too out of place. But it was precisely because of Mei's uncontrollable performance that Yiqing Luo was almost certain of the guess in her heart. Mei's words. It made Zhou Xian's expressionless handsome face gradually turn gloomy. That pair of deep and watery peach blossom eyes flashed past a sharp glint. But Mei apparently didn't notice the change in Zhou Xian's emotions. She covered her own face as she scolded Yiqing Luo viciously and like a white lotus, pitifully crying about her feelings towards Zhou Xian, while belittling Yiqing Luo to be worthless. While she was narrating, if she were to stand by Zhou Xian's side, what kind of benefits and help would she bring to him? Zhou Xian's brows creased tighter and tighter. The formless energy fluttered his robe. The powerful aura was incomparably overbearing. Just as Zhou Xian was about to fly into a rage, a clear voice was heard. Whether I'm worthy of Xian or not, that's between me and Xian. What has it got to do with you? Mei's voice paused as she swiftly stared at the sedan. Since you're sincerely seeking guidance on why should I stand by Xian's side, then I shall be merciful and tell you. In the sedan, the young lady's voice rang once again. That voice was like a pearl falling onto a plate, extremely pleasing to the ear. Under the white veil, Mei seemed to see a pair of torch-like eyes, deadly, staring at her without blinking. The moment she was stared at by that gaze, Mei always felt an indescribable chill seeping into her skin, spreading from the bottom of her heart. Her body was trembling uncontrollably. Xian loves me. Yiqing Luo said it word by word, extremely slow and clear. Mei's eyes widened and her pupils contracted little by little. A ruthless killing intent surged in his eyes. She staggered back a few steps and shook her head hysterically. He doesn't love you. He definitely doesn't love you. He's just playing with you, just playing with you. Of course, it's not just because Xian loves me. It's also because I'm young, because I'm beautiful, because I'm stronger than you. Yiqing Luo totally disregarded Plum's crazy howls. He was still smiling as he continued to attack Mei. As for the benefits and help you can bring to Xian, I don't think it's important. Yiqing Luo lazily leaned against the back of the soft chair as her voice revealed a languid tone. Based on Xian's ability, he totally doesn't need your help. Mei's ferocious face twisted crazily again. Her scream turned into a roar. He looked extremely terrifying and irritable. Fush. I'll kill you. Kill you. Mei howled crazily. Her stomach full of grievances made her completely lose control as she pounced towards the sedan. The 4 maids immediately got into a defensive posture. Just as Mei pounced over in rage, the smile in the sedan grew even more intense. Chapter 3047. By Mei. These 2 words were like thunder, exploding in Mei's mind. Her body, which was pouncing towards Yiqing Luo, suddenly froze on the spot. Mei raised her head abruptly, her bloodshot eyes stared at Yiqing Luo. What did you call me? By Mei Fu. When she said these 3 words, she purposely dragged out the word Fu, and immediately stopped and chuckled. I'm sorry, I've forgotten that you're no longer the teacher of the Heavenly Academy's class of God. Mei seemed to have been poked at the most unbearable wound. She immediately pointed at Yiqing Luo angrily. What master, what Heavenly Academy, little slut? Don't try to change the topic. Isn't that so? Yiqing Luo tilted her head and gave a sarcastic smile. Initially I wasn't too sure about my own guess. But other than Bai Meiyu, this old woman, who else would care about their own age like Zhou Xian? Just now, Meiqing Luo had screamed hysterically, saying that Yiqing Luo had used her youth and beauty to seduce Zhou Xian. This made Yiqing Luo, who originally suspected that Mei was Bai Mei, even more certain of her guess. Only Bai Mei would care about her age in front of Zhou Xian. Because previously, in order to diss Bai Mei, she deliberately used Bai Mei's age to make Bai Mei vomit blood. When she saw Mei, Yiqing Luo had always felt that Mei was very strange. Especially that face, which totally didn't match her temperament. It was especially out of place. Speaking of which, Bai Mei really worked hard for Zhou Xian. She didn't hesitate to abandon her charming face and put on a young and beautiful face. Did she really think that Zhou Xian was that kind of shallow man? Mei. That was Bai Mei, gloomily looked at Yiqing Luo. Little slut, did you think that by exposing my identity the Overlord will punish me because of this? Unfortunately, you are wrong. As if she had caught the only pride, Bai Mei's eyes flashed a trace of excitement. The Overlord will only forgive me because I am Bai Mei. She was indeed Bai Mei. Since Yiqing Luo saw through her, she might as well not refute. Anyway, even if Yiqing Luo did not expose her, after the balance historian captured Yiqing Luo away, she would also take the initiative to confess her identity to Zhou Xian. She hated her identity as Bai Mei. She hated that body that was in her 30s. However, in order to use the name Bai Mei in exchange for his life, he had no choice. He had to confess. However, now it was Yiqing Luo who was the first to reveal it. Bai Mei stared at Yiqing Luo as her eyes shone with a cunning chill. In the sedan, the young girl listened to Bai Mei's words. Her long and narrow eyes narrowed slightly. This was not the first time that Bai Mei had relied on her status to firmly believe that Zhou Xian would not do anything to her. What did Bai Mei rely on? Was this the so-called sister that she had mentioned? That sister. Between her and Zhou Xian, although she believed that it was not a particularly ambiguous relationship between a man and a woman. But what kind of unknown past did her man have with another person of the opposite sex? Regardless of whether it was ambiguous or not, more or less he would feel uncomfortable in his heart. Especially when Bai Mei had been using her own sister to continuously provoke Zhou Xian's bottom line. This Bai Mei was really shameless to the extreme. Yiqing Luo was thinking about how to dispel Bai Mei's idea of using her own sister to make her presence known. Chapter 30-48. Bai Mei was feeling complacent because Yiqing Luo didn't retaliate. Suddenly he felt a surge of dense profound energy, biting cold, surging down violently. At this moment, how could the heavily injured Bai Mei possibly dodge this horrifying power? Her entire body was flipped over. In the air there were bursts of exploding sounds. Bai Mei felt as if her internal organs, limbs and bones were being torn apart by something. It was so painful that she sprawled on the ground, screaming miserably. This scene made Yiqing Luo raise her brows as she sat up straight. Her gaze, through the veil, shot straight to that noble and elegant figure. It was Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian's face was cold, without any extra emotions. His icy cold face revealed a trace of sharpness. A pair of deep black peach blossom eyes as dark as the sea. Bai Mei, do you really think that I don't dare to kill you? His icy cold voice was filled with chilliness. Bai Mei laid on the ground in a sorry state, her petite body twitching from time to time. You kill me, sister will not let you off. Whoever hurts little Luo, I will not let any of them off, even if it's her, it's the same. Zhou Xian was expressionless. This sentence. It made Bai Mei want to rely on her sister's words, to be stuck in her throat. Her eyes suddenly turned red. She was clear. Whatever Zhou Xian said, he would put it into action. The meaning in Zhou Xian's words was already very clear. As long as it was related to Yiqing Luo, even if her sister came personally, he would absolutely not be soft-hearted and would not tolerate it. Not knowing if it was the heartache or the pain in her body, it made her hands curl up. Tears rolled down from her eyes. Zhou Xian flicked his sleeves, too lazy to take another look at Bai Mei. His peripheral vision shot a glance towards Ayu's direction. Ayu understood, flew up and directly carried Bai Mei on her shoulder. Bai Mei was still grieving when suddenly being carried by Ayu. Instantly that twisted face became even more twisted from the pain. Her voice was hoarse and she struggled hard. Your Majesty, are you really going to hurt the relationship between you and my sister for a lowly person from the mortal world? Big sister has always doted on me the most. Big sister will never forgive you for treating me like this. I will never forgive you. Her screams, her struggles. She did not receive any attention from Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian's peripheral vision had not even fallen onto her. Instead he looked straight ahead at the people from the underworld palace who were supporting each other as they crawled up from the ground. This exalted one wishes to perform a blood sacrifice for the underworld palace to support this exalted one's woman. Everyone from the underworld palace should have no objections, right? Although he meant it as a question. But his tone was clearly a statement. In other words, he wasn't asking for the opinions of the people from the underworld palace. It was just a symbolic notice. The expressions of the people from the underworld palace changed dramatically. All of them widened their eyes and moved their mouths, but they were unable to utter a single word to refute Zhou Xian. They had experienced Di Zun's brutality. If he retorted, who knows, another round of vicious beatings. The people of the underworld palace were feeling apprehensive. On the other side, Bai Mei's struggling on Ayu's back gradually stopped. Suddenly she started crying and laughing crazily, looking at Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian's attitude had already told her very clearly. Don't try to use her sister's name to make him compromise. To him, the most important was only Yiqing Luo. Anyone else, even if it was his sister. Chapter 30-49. Bai Mei, whose heart was like dead ashes, laughed and cried as she collapsed on Ayu's shoulder. Other than laughing and crying crazily, she had quietened down. Zhou Xian's gaze had never looked at Bai Mei. He slowly narrowed his eyes as he looked at the row of burly men in front of him. Then he strode forward and walked into the underworld palace's entrance. Old Lai and the rest looked at each other. All of them wanted to stop him, but their feet had just moved. Zhou Xian's entire body carried a berserk force as he was sent flying. Rumble. A huge cracking sound was heard, splashing mud and stones all over the ground. The pitch-black space was filled with terrifying and shocking energy. It was like a level 12 tornado sweeping up everything in its surroundings. The Hell Palace's main door was directly blasted open. Zhou Xian's steps were steady as he stepped into the Hell Palace bit by bit. Behind him, Alei carried Xiaba on one hand and Ling Yan on the other. Ayu was carrying Bai Mei. Following which they walked towards the Hell Palace. Little Nine raised his neck, shaking the snow-white fur on his body. Only then did he take graceful steps, pulling the carriage and following behind. The four maids also followed closely behind. Just like that, the group of people swaggered into the underworld palace. The Hell Palace was indeed as its name suggested. Rather than saying it was a mansion, it was more like an underground cave. The entire underground cave was extremely spacious. It looked eerie and extremely terrifying. After stepping into the Hell Palace, the surroundings were no longer that pitch-black space like before. On both sides of the rock wall, there were 2 candlesticks every 10 over steps. On the candlesticks, there were candles inserted diagonally. The candles were bright, elongating everyone's shadows. Of course, if these candles were ordinary candles, Yiqing Luo would absolutely not think that this was terrifying. What made her curious was the candles on both sides were burning with a kind of almost green light. The entire Hell Palace was filled with a kind of faint green feeling. This green light was mixed with an extremely damp and cold aura. The sizzling sound of burning could be heard. Yiqing Luo seemed to have smelled a strange smell in the air. It made her extremely disgusted. What the hell, what kind of candle is this? Why is the color so strange? And it gave people such a strange feeling? Especially when his line of sight touched the candlelight. There was always a very uneasy feeling in her heart. In this uneasiness, she subconsciously stretched out her hand and touched the cherry blossom pattern on her wrist. The skin he touched was smooth and shiny. The bright red cherry blossoms on her fair wrist were extremely obvious. The azure dew bracelet was still on her wrist. She thought that back then she had risked her life to stall Xiaba and forcefully break the blood contract with the azure dew bracelet. But when she woke up, the veined pattern of the azure dew bracelet was still on her wrist and hadn't disappeared. Yiqing Luo's eyes stared fixedly at the azure dew bracelet for a long time. although the azure dew bracelet was still there. But Old Man Tsang was no longer there. Not only Old Man Tsang. She couldn't sense anything related to the azure dew bracelet. If it weren't for the fact that the azure dew bracelet's vein patterns were still there. She really thought. The azure dew bracelet had already dissolved its blood contract with her, and no one knew where it had gone. If Old Man Tsang was still here, he would definitely tell her what these candles were. But she couldn't contact Old Man Tsang. Was Old Man Tsang angry at her? Angry at her stubbornness. Chapter 30-50. Liluo, what's the matter? A man's low hoarse voice suddenly rang beside her ear. Yiqing Luo raised her head abruptly. A figure brushed past her eyes. Her petite body suddenly felt light as she was brought into a broad embrace. The man's arm encircled her waist. He rested his chin on her shoulder. A warm breath lightly sprayed on the skin of her neck. Why are you suddenly feeling down? Unhappy? Yiqing Luo's body leaned back slightly as she changed into a more comfortable position in the man's embrace. Her slender little hand hooked one of his fingers as she played with it, thinking of Old Man Tsang. She didn't hide it as she lowered her eyelids and said softly, "My willfulness hurt his heart. He should be angry at me. Don't let your imagination run wild." Zhou Xian turned his head and kissed her cheek. Old Man Tsang dotes on you so much, how would he bear to be angry at you? The azure dew bracelet's response has disappeared. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips as she raised her right hand. The circle of bright red cherry blossom petals was the same as usual without any change in them. But only Yiqing Luo could sense the change within. Zhou Xian's slender fingers clasped her wrist. His slightly calloused fingertips gently caressed the patches of red lines. In order to stop the Hell Palace's people, you made a move on the Sacred Maiden Institute. That's indeed reckless. Zhou Xian opened his mouth and gently bit her neck. His low hoarse voice had a trace of displeasure. You forcefully wanted to dissolve the azure dew bracelet's blood contract. This not only affected the azure dew bracelet, your spiritual body will also be affected. Adding on to that, you forcefully activated the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade and the two overlapped. It has far exceeded the burden your body can bear. It's already a miracle that you're still alive now. As for the azure dew bracelet, after being tormented by you, it definitely needs to undergo self-repair. Naturally, you're unable to sense the azure dew bracelet's energy. After explaining, Zhou Xian raised his hand and knocked Yiqing Luo's head hard. After the azure dew bracelet is repaired, Old Man Tsang will naturally look for you. Yiqing Luo rubbed her little head into his embrace. Her little act of acting cute did not make Zhou Xian reduce the strength in his hands. He knocked on her head again. Do you still dare to be willful in the future? I don't dare. Yiqing Luo purposely cried out in pain as she shrank her little head. Remember what you said. This time round, Zhou Xian's hand encircled her slender waist again as he leaned close to her ear. If there's a next time, I'll continue for the third time. Yiqing Luo. Did he mean to give him a taste of his own medicine? He worried him. Was he going to let her worry for once? Why don't I feel the same way? Was there a need to be so overbearing? There was only a white veil hanging around the sedan. Although they couldn't see what was happening inside clearly from the outside. However, he could vaguely see the figure under the veil. The shadows of the two embracing each other and the occasional chuckle. The eyes of Bai Mei, who was lying quietly on Ayu's back like a corpse, like stagnant water, trembled slightly. Jealousy spread from the bottom of her eyes. Zhou Xian and his entourage swaggered into the Hell Palace. Old Lai and the rest naturally followed behind them with small steps. They didn't dare to get too close. They were also afraid of losing them. The entourage walked like this for about the time it took to burn a stick of incense. Chapter 30-51. On the way they passed by at least 20 over candles. After seeing those green candlelight, the uneasy feeling in Yiqing Luo's heart grew stronger. The man's large palm gently pressed on her shoulder as he whispered, "I'm here." Yiqing Luo raised her eyes and met the man's deep and warm eyes. Her charming eyes slightly curved, and she could feel that something was wrong with the candlelight. How could Zhou Xian not feel it? Zhou Xian said it was fine. Then it must be fine. I will let you settle the debt with them personally. Zhou Xian whispered into her ear in a low and hoarse voice. Yiqing Luo was tickled and her petite body trembled as she rubbed her head against his shoulder. Bai Mei has informed the balance historian. Will it cause you trouble? Your business has never been troublesome. Zhou Xian curled up a strand of her hair and twirled it around his fingertip as he gave a low laugh. As for currently, other than you, I have not met anyone who dares to find trouble with me. Yiqing Luo raised her brows as she stared at him. The first sentence said I'm not your trouble and the next sentence became me finding trouble with you men. As she said that she shook her head and sighed. Zhou Xian's eyes were filled with pampering as he pressed her little head with both hands to stop her from shaking her head. Just as he was about to kiss her. Suddenly there was a commotion in front. Immediately in front, more than 10 figures were rushing over. Those 10 over people carried a horrifying aura. Along with their approaching speed, the entire Hell Palace was swept up by a strong hurricane. Yiqing Luo's eyes flashed as her little hand pressed against Zhou Xian's chest as she sat up straight and looked over. She saw a bunch of dirty and sloppy-looking people rushing over from the corner ahead. Their speed was extremely fast and without the slightest hesitation. Their aura was domineering and ferocious. At the same time, Old Lai and the rest who had been following behind, not daring to get close, seemed to have been reborn as they joined the 10 over people in a pincer attack as they swarmed over. In a split second the earth shook. The air in the entire Hell Palace seemed to be swept up by mud and stones. The surging strength chi surged violently, surging like a dragon, producing a sharp explosive sound. This sudden attack. Ayu and Ale could only choose to quickly put down the things they were carrying and respond quickly. The underworld palace had at least 20 people in total. Moreover, when they started fighting, they were so crazy that it seemed like they would die with you at any moment. No matter how high Ayu and Ale's profound rank were. In the face of such a large number of people and their ferocious fighting style, both of them were struggling. The maids around the carriage stood where they were, not showing any signs of interfering. Lao Lai and the others wanted to take the opportunity to attack the sedan. He had yet to get close. He was thrown out by the 4 maids at the same time. The few of them roughly understood. These 4 female attendants were only protecting Yiqing Luo alone. As long as Yiqing Luo was in danger, then they would take action. Looking at the sudden outbreak of battle in front of him, Zhou Xian's hand which was locked on Yiqing Luo's waist tightened slightly as a low laugh escaped from his mouth. Interesting. Saying that, he had already let go of Yiqing Luo and stood up. Wait for me in the carriage. The corners of his lips curled up into a magnificent smile. Zhou Xian's footsteps had just stepped out of the carriage. The gauze curtain which was originally dancing wildly due to the energy, actually drooped down at this moment. As though there was no wind blowing in the surroundings.